Thank you guys for joining tonight. And I know you have a busy life, so we've really cut this down to about 20 minutes. It's packed full of information, so you might want to take your pen and pencil and keep up with us. And tonight is going to be on the perverse relationship between breast cancer and environmental estrogens. So what is the state of breast cancer in America today? There's over 300,000 new cases in women, 2,500 new cases in men, and 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer in their lifetime. Now, breast cancer is the leading killer of women aged 35 to 54. But what we're going to look at tonight is 8 out of 10 cancers are from environmental toxins. And breast cancer is expected to increase 30% up to 2030. And 15% to 25% of breast cancer cases are overdiagnosed. We're going to take a look at that too. And the national cost is $17 billion spent on breast cancer, and $15 billion is spent on breast cancer research. But only a paltry 1 to 3% is spent on prevention. So let's see what the next slide is. So what exactly is cancer? I mean, how does anyone get cancer? I mean, we all have cancer within our body, but it's controlled because we have an immune system that keeps it in check. So again, we all have cancer, but the key is that we keep a strong immune system, and it's like Pac-Man. It goes around and eats up these uncontrolled cells. So when there's a break in the immune system, then we get cancer. But again, there's so many factors that can come into what weakens our immune system. So this is how it works from a thermography point of view. Angioneogenesis is the beginning of a new blood supply. And if you look at that the far left, the VEGF production, that's the beginning of a tumor growth. And that's the beginning of inflammation. So the cells are starting to replicate. And in thermography, because the camera is basically like a big thermometer pointed at your body and it's looking at heat, and it will pick up inflammation. So that's starting to give off a little bit of heat. It may take years before that tumor has a blood vessel growth. So now we have the uncontrolled proliferation of cells, and they're just, they're getting hotter and hotter and hotter and growing. They have nutrients and they have oxygen. And now the camera is picking up that that's a signature of cancer. That is hot. But it may take, depending on the growth of a tumor, it may take 8 to 10 years before it's big enough to be seen on mammography, an ultrasound, or an MRI, because now it's an anatomy. So what we're looking at in the heat, it's called physiology. And once it's found on conventional screening, it's an anatomy. So when you go to school and you learn anatomy and physiology, in this it's actually physiology and anatomy. So again, by the time it's big enough to be seen on a mammogram, it's been cooking there for 8 to 10 years in the stages of inflammation. So toxic assets, this is the growing breast. We now have bra sizes up to double K. And the bra sizes have started to increase since 1973. So this is a classic image of Sophia Loren and Jane Mansfield. I don't know if she had breast implants back then. I think that was just her. But again, the breasts are getting larger and larger, and it's because we're exposed to so many hormones. We're exposed to so many foreign estrogens. So let's take a look at this next slide. And one of the most toxic things that we can put on our body is cosmetics, because it has the perfect uptake. Whatever we put on our skin is in our body within about 26 seconds. So if you're not getting your beauty care product from a health food store or through a network marketing, chances are you're putting environmental toxins on your body and estrogen disruptors. So what is, excuse me, what is an estrogen disruptor before we get into this toxic beauty? It is an estrogen that enters our body through inhalation, through our skin, through what we eat, of course breathing, did I say breathing? And they enter as an estrogen, and our body picks it up as an estrogen. But once it gets there, it's a endocrine or an estrogen disruptor. So it goes to the receptor sites where the estrogen receptor sites are, and they park there like Velcro, but they disrupt it disrupts the endocrine system. It can disrupt the hormonal balance in the ovaries and in the thyroid and in the pancreas and in the prostate and in the ovaries. So, our hormones are the guardians of health, and we're literally swimming in a sea of estrogen right now. If anybody saw that movie called Plastic Ocean, it just shows that there's plastic everywhere, and it's showing up in the fish. And plastics are, hormonal disruptors. But getting back to beauty care, blusher. If you look at that, it says hormonal disruptors. Eyeshadow also has hormonal disruptors. Lipstick, the side effects are, allergies and links to cancer. In fact, MAC lipstick had a dark red out several years ago, and it had, I don't know if it had mercury in it. It had something. They pulled it off the market. It was so toxic. But foundation also has links to cancer, disrupts the immune system. Deodorant. This is interesting because I just wrote a book and I put one of the chapters was on deodorant. Parabens that are in deodorant. Think about it. You shave under your arms and then you put a deodorant on. And if you're not using a natural deodorant, those chemicals go right into the body. It's a perfect storm because the pores are open. But they have found parabens from deodorant in pretty much across the board of breast tissue samples. Body lotion, again, hormonal disruption. Fake tan, hormonal disruption. If you're going to do perfume, try to stay with the natural essential oils because there's over 250 chemicals in perfume. Shampoo, the most worrisome is lauryl sulfate. You've probably heard about that, and that's what they use to degrease oil on in garage floors. So again, beauty is very toxic right now, beauty products, and men, excuse me, are also working with, they're buying a lot of beauty care products. Again, unless you're getting it from the health food store or a network marketing company or something like Dr. Hauschka, just dump it because it's not worth it. And you have to think about what your children, your daughters are using. The more it smells, the more, as they call that, fragrance, that's just more toxic. So you definitely want to start moving toward environmentally safe beauty care products. So environmental toxins, where do they come from? Plastic bottles are the worst. First of all, we don't even know what's in those bottles. We don't know where that water comes from. We don't know if it's fluoride water, but it's sitting. We don't know how many months or years it's been sitting in plastic, and that's leaching it out. There was a study done at Duke University, and they had breast cancer cells in test tubes, and the plastic started leaching, and then the breast cancer cells started proliferating, and they were like, oh my goodness. So then they started studying the lining of cans, the white lining of cans. You get your beans and your coconut milk or whatever, and they found that the lining in cans had more hormone disruptors that were able to increase or proliferate breast cancer cells, more than 25% of what Stanford University had worked with. So if you're getting something from a can, make sure it says BPA free, because that is it's like playing with fire. So it's coming from the air that we breathe. Tap water is becoming something of the past. Seriously, you have to think about filtering your water. But if you can't afford to get a filter when it comes into the apartment or comes into the house, at least do it for the water that you drink. But you also are bathing in that. So it comes fluoride, chlorine, bisphenol A, BPA, parabens, phthalates, mercury, bromide. All of those things are putting us at risk, and it's affecting our hormonal system. And again, 8 out of 10 cancers now are coming from environmental toxins. So here we have an image of a man with breast, and now men are getting breast reduction. And estrogen is impacting on men, not only women, but men also. So since 1992, the average male testosterone has dropped by 25%, and the estrogen has increased by 45%. And this is going around the world that the sperm count continues to drop, and now it's at about 40%. And this is going back about 10 years. PBS had a special on, and it was on the male fish and estuaries, particularly around, this was Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, that the male fish and estuaries were becoming female. So now they're finding that amphibians, frogs, are having eggs on their testes. So again, we're seeing, this estrogen movement around the world. And I was working with a young boy last month, and he had an Invisalign on. And Invisalign is a plastic. And around his face, which we'll see in another slide, the estrogen can come up looking like leopard spots. And it's only seen like this on thermography. So classically, this inflammation from estrogens looks like leopard spots. And that young boy had leopard spots all around his mouth where his Invisalign was, and it was draining into his lymphatic system, and he was getting puffy little boobies. This little boy was 15 years old, and he was getting breast. Was it coming from the Invisalign? I don't know, but I will tell you it was draining into his lymphatic system. Let's see what the next one is. Oh, here we go. So classically, estrogen dominance will look like leopard spots appearance. So if you see those images on the left right there, you'll see that those receptor sites are filled with estrogen. Again, thermography is the only system that you can actually see with live time what's actually on these receptor sites, and these are pockets of inflammation. So it's also called fibrocystic breast, and it is not normal, but it's common, but it's not normal, and we're seeing it more and more in industrialized nations. And so you'll think of fibrocystic breast as having tenderness and lumpiness, and again, most women experience that at least once or twice in their lifetime. But just with the environmental estrogens and these estrogens that's in the body, they show up, and not necessarily will a person get those tender breasts. Again, it's on men and women and some children. So if we look at that image to the right, the more adipose tissue that's on a body, that's called fatty tissue, those receptor sites, fat is actually called the third estrogen, and those receptor sites, they bind with these foreign estrogens and the estrogen. So I would say that that woman on the right would be in line for a detox. So we really don't have any available testing for women under 40, and there's 47,000 deaths per year of younger women because it is starting to creep into the lives of younger women. But women who have dense breast and lumpy breast, many times they'll be getting a mammogram in their 30s or maybe their 20s because of the fear of it being breast cancer. And if they have dense breast, they will be continuing having mammograms. And it clearly states on the mammogram website that for dense breast, it's highly ineffective because it's looking, they can't see through the tissue. So again, there's no available testing for women under 40 unless they start getting mammograms early because of lumps and density. And again, sadly, this is a nursing mother. She was in her 30s and she had inflammatory breast cancer. This could never be seen on a mammogram because a mammogram is looking at anatomy and thermography is looking at heat. So again, it's creeping into the lives of younger and younger women. And, do we know exactly why? But we know that, again, we're living with so many estrogens, we're living with so many toxins. And I would highly suggest a detox. Dr. Iannello has wonderful detoxes here through standard process. And it's never too late to start detoxing. And hey, it's right after the holidays. I mean, it's a perfect time to really think about that as we move toward, the end of winter and into spring. So again, breast cancer is creeping into the lives of younger women. So what will you do now that mammograms have been proven to be ineffective and harmful? There's been 2 major studies that shows that mammogram, they thought to save lives, have actually done little to reduce late stage cancers. And what they have found that it's led to overdiagnosis. It's really not saved that many lives, and therefore it goes into overtreatment. These studies were at the New England Journal of Medicine. That was 3 decades. And the British Medical Journal, that was a 25-year follow-up on breast cancer incidences. And they found that mammograms create more harm than good. Now in Switzerland, they've abolished it. But what they found since the inception of mammograms, going back almost 40 years, is that the doctors were actually concerned what was going to happen to women that were having their breasts radiated. So mammograms have ionizing radiation, and that is the most dangerous type of radiation, and it is cumulative. So conventional detection, okay, here we have, it's an anatomical approach. If it's a bump, lumps, tumor, or a cyst, this is what they're looking for. So we go back to that slide that was on angioneogenesis. In the beginning, those lumps, bumps, and cysts and tumors, they started out as heat. And they could be benign, but what they're looking for in conventional detection through an MRI, an ultrasound, an X-ray, or mammogram, they're looking for an anatomical structure, something that will block an X-ray beam. So it's either yes, you have cancer, or no, you don't have cancer. Now, what we know now, that it takes 8 to 10 years for a tumor to grow into an anatomical structure if it is cancer. Really, what a mammogram is saying is that, no, we don't see it, so keep coming back every year, and when it's big enough, then we can treat it, because they cannot detect, conventional detection does not detect heat. So mammograms, here's the lowdown on mammograms. It emits ionizing radiation, and it may be painful. 80% of biopsies are false positives, and that's through the National Institute of Health. Well, the good news is 80% of biopsies, being that they're false positives, that means they're benign, is that what's in a woman's breast is just benign, but they're over-treating her. 10% are false negatives, and that's also through National Institute of Health. And the mammogram guidelines are being challenged at this time. And what they're saying is it's too much radiation for women, 40 and 50. I had one doctor that I quoted in a book that I just wrote, Dr. Peter Ghosh. He said that, and he wrote a book on basically the truth out on mammograms. It's very medical, but he said to radiate a woman under 50 years old really borderlines on unethical. So because 40 to 50% of women have dense breasts, they offer women something called 3D tomosynthesis, and that's a mammogram that delivers. Actually, this is a typo, because when I wrote my book, I just did the studies, and that's not 30%, it's actually 38% more ionizing radiation. So they can actually, that's what they do for women who have dense breasts, so they're actually creating more radiation in that particular screening. And the National Cancer Institute states that radiation is a risk factor for malignant tumors. So if you have 4 breast films, that's what you get usually in one session for a mammogram, that exposes a woman to 1 rad. That's radiation absorbed, and that's about 100 times more than a chest X-ray. So if cancer is present, the extreme compression during a mammogram helps cancerous cells to spread. And The Lancet is a very prestigious peer-reviewed magazine for doctors. So what is breast thermography? It detects physiology instead of anatomy. Again, it's looking at heat. You can detect many years up before a mammogram. There's no radiation. It's safe at any age. It detects if a bump, lump, or cyst is metabolically active. It detects if there's heat there, and it reduces unnecessary biopsies. So if we look at the color image on the left, that is called a thermogram. That means that is an image of heat. And it really is just a pretty picture, but you can see red in there, and you can see red around her her breast, and a lot of that's just surface heat, but our doctors are looking at 76,000 pixels, and they're looking for the bilateral heat differences, and not just in the breast, but in the body. And the grayscale, we're one of the few companies that use the grayscale, and that looks like a black and white photograph. But 60% of the findings are in the grayscale, and they're looking at vascular patterns, and they're looking for the mottling for the fibrocystic breast. So the grayscale is very important. And it's interesting because everyone looks the same, and it doesn't even show tattoos. So we all look the same in infrared. The restrictive nature of a brassiere inhibits the lymphatic system, leading to an increased risk of breast cancer. This woman has not had a bra on for 20 minutes. You look at all that backup of red in her back, that's lymphatic backup. There's a great book called Dress to Kill, and it's the link between breast cancer and bras. I highly suggest reading it. Men have been manipulating what they want our breasts to look like for over 2,000 years. And I will tell you, Victoria's Secret's, her real secret is that it's a multi-million-dollar company, and it really promotes not just bad breast health, but bad self-esteem for the breast. And those wires, you got to ditch those wires because it goes right up under the arm into the lymphatic system, and that is lymphatic stagnation. So if your bra is too tight, either get a larger size or get a bra extender. But I highly suggest reading that book. It's actually kind of jaw-dropping because they've gone around the world and they've looked at other groups of women that don't wear bras, and they really don't have breast cancer in those societies. So again, it's called the Dress to Kill, the link between breast cancer and bras. We see this so common with thermography. Again, this is not necessarily environmental estrogens, but we are seeing the leakage of the oral cavity into the lymphatic system. And it is what's happening in the mouth can affect the entire body. And you can see in this particular image the drainage that has gone into her breast tissue. So it's very important to stay on top of your oral health, particularly if you have root canals. Oh my goodness. If you have root canals, please go online and rent the movie called Root Cause. It was taken off Netflix, and you can rent it on YouTube or Amazon, but it is the link between all kinds of ill health and root canals. But again, a biological dentist is who you want to be seeing. And let's see what we got next. Okay, so here we have a 6-month breast protection detox protocol. And this is before. The woman on the right here, you'll see all the mottling, and that's indicative of little pockets of inflammation from estrogen. And 6 months later, after doing Dr. Ionella's protocol, you'll see how her breast cleaned up. So the breasts love all things green. So just think about, sulforaphane and them from broccoli and barley grass and, just green, 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 green. So we like all greens and the life force from plants. Okay, so here we are coming at the end. Thermography is not just for the breast. We offer upper body and we offer full body. And we can check for cerebral vascular screening, of course, breast cancer screening, back pain, nerve pathology, arthritis, intestinal inflammation, hormone imbalances, vein thromboses, and circulation. So again, you might want to consider doing a full body just to get an overview of where your body is in real time. And there will always be a follow-up, and most likely it'll just be for the breast. So when it comes to the breast screening, the efficacy of thermography is in the follow-up. So there's a baseline of what the breasts look like, and then you want to get to once a year. I'm with the Professional Academy of Clinical Thermology, and we are the leading interpreters in the country. We adhere to not only national guidelines, but international guidelines, and we have 3 doctors that review our reports. And then Dr. Ionella will review the reports with you and put you on the protocols for good health. So all screenings are held every other month at North Isle Wellness, and we hope to see you next week, Wednesday the 22nd, and again in March on the 11th. So thank you for watching, and have a good evening, and hopefully we'll see you soon. And here's to healthy, happy breast and overall health. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to stick around for another couple of minutes. If you have any comments or questions, please put them in the comment box below. And we are here answering everything live. So we'd love to hear your feedback, what you found most interesting. And again, if you have any questions, call us at the office or call us to book your screenings. Have a great night. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.